Hey everybody, welcome back to I Know a Guy. I'm Anthony, and this is the podcast where connections thrive. Each episode, we spotlight inspiring entrepreneurs, professionals, and individuals doing amazing things. Together, we'll grow your circle, spark collaborations, and discover new opportunities. Today, we're meeting Michael Whitehouse, known as the guy who knows a guy, a master connector who went from knowing no one in Groton, Connecticut, to becoming a major community connector in just 6 months. Now, Michael connects multi-million-dollar businesses globally and hosts dynamic virtual and networking events that bring people together for success. How you doing today, Michael?
I'm doing great. Great to be here. And with a show called I Know a Guy, how could I not be on this?
So that was one of the funniest things is, I did this, I started, and I just was inundated by, have you met Michael Whitehouse? And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then I seen you in a couple groups. I was like, okay, that's really funny. I got to talk with him. And then we talked, and you are the guy who knows the guy. You're doing awesome things. And I just had to, first I had to laugh at it because it's, the serendipity of it. But then I had to, connect with you and, put you out there so more people can know because you're doing great things. So
Thank you.
I was really excited to have you on. But to start off, where are you calling in from? Where are you located?
I am still in Groton, Connecticut. And someone's not from here if they say Groton. It's Groton. But I'm up here. I recently got back from the Marketers Cruise, which was down in the Caribbean. And then I drove back and watched the thermometer go toot, 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 down to 0 degrees. But it's a balmy 27 degrees today.
There you go. That's sweater. I mean, you're out in shorts at that weather. Right?
Yeah, sweatshirt weather. Yeah.
Yeah. No, you go out. It didn't take long for it to start dropping either because the South is getting it pretty good right now. They're all freaking out. So yeah, awesome. Well, yeah. So welcome back home. You're from Groton, Connecticut. I've never been there. If you have somebody coming to visit, for instance, where are you taking them? What are you doing? And what are you taking them to eat?
There are a lot of really nice restaurants there because it's a tourist area. So there's a lot of higher end places like Red 36 and Olio and whatnot. But really the place to take someone that's going to impress them is the casinos, because we have two of the larger casinos outside of Las Vegas, and they are full resorts. They are really cool resorts that are funded by the gambling. So if you don't gamble, you just avoid the slot machines and whatnot and go to the cool stuff, which is funded by that. So both of them have all kinds of restaurants and attractions and a 10,000 seat arena that we would never have in 250,000 person New London County if it weren't for the fact that that's where the tribe reservations are. So they built it there. But yes, it's a really interesting area because it's very scenic and it's fairly rustic and historic. But there's not a lot here. And that was one of the challenges for me as a connector, is that it's not actually that hard to get to know not everyone, but everyone of significance, because it's not a huge area, which is great, except if your business is, say, a local magazine and your job is selling ads in that local magazine, and you realize the addressable market is 3,000 businesses, and pretty quickly you get to the point where there's no one else to call. So being able to meet everyone doesn't help you if everyone isn't a lot of people.
Yeah, accurate. Well, how'd you end up where you are? How did you get started? What is it that you do?
So what I do is I connect people. I'm a hyper extrovert. I love meeting people. I said just got off the Marketers Cruise, 8 days on a cruise ship with 440 other business owners, entrepreneurs, marketers, plus the other 3,500 people who weren't with us who were just on the cruise. And I'm the kind of person that I was up till 2:00 hanging out and doing the late night stuff. And then I'd get up again at 8 a.m. and go get breakfast with everyone and just be with people all day. And other than the fact that my frail human body makes me tired eventually, the actual being around people, never get tired of that. So everything is built on loving people and connecting and being out there. And it started with just when I moved to this area, I didn't know anyone. I didn't have a business. I didn't have anything to sell. I didn't have a job. I had nothing to offer. All I had was liking people. So I started meeting people and introducing them to other people I'd met. I'm like, oh, you're cool. Have you met that cool guy? You guys should meet. And before I knew it, I was like, oh, you're cool. Have you met the mayor of this town? No, you should meet him. I think he'd like you. Oh, have you met the guy who owns that business over there? I think you'd like him. And just kept doing that until I was like, oh, you're the mayor of this town. Have you met the mayor of that town? You haven't? Let me introduce you. So that's the funny thing. I joke in New England that New Englanders like vampires. They can't cross running water. that, if there's a river between two towns, oh no, I've never been over there. Like, there's a huge bridge, there's a bridge, you can just drive over. Yeah, but there's a river. So I made those connections, but the area was limited. And then when COVID hit, I was trying to figure out, how do I keep doing my business, which is based on in-person networking, selling magazine ads online. Turns out that wasn't possible. But in the course of it, I discovered the internet. Okay, I discovered the internet before, but I connected to this global virtual business community and was able to start connecting with online entrepreneurs around the world in dozens of countries on every continent, and found a need for connection, whether it's events, because most of the virtual events were simply the speakers from live events without all the stuff that made live events fun, which is the interaction, or just people trying to make connections. And so I started running virtual events that were fun and interactive, and not just like, a lot of these events were like a YouTube playlist. It was a series of recordings or a series of non-interactive speakers. I'm like, this is an event. So I started running virtual events that felt like events, just online. I started making introductions for people. I found that there were clients willing to hire me to make introductions for them because they knew who they needed to meet, but they needed someone. They didn't have the time to get out there and go to all the events and make all the connections. And that's the quick version of how I got here, is just, I love connecting people and became an extrovert for hire. And of course, in the course of that, I learned a lot. And so that's how I've gotten into coaching and mentoring, because for a lot of people, in fact, just for this recording session, I ran a webinar for my community, taught them a bunch of things, then had a call with someone else who basically just picked my brain 15 minutes and then said, okay, thanks, and got off the call, which, by the way, if you do that, how can I help you would be the appropriate response. Just as a quick side note, he forgot that part, but that's fine. I get to feel helpful. And then a friend of mine messaged me and said, hey, I've got this, and what else could I do instead of that? And I'm like, oh, try doing this. He's like, oh, that's brilliant. And now I'm here. So I've learned a couple things meeting a bunch of people, and sometimes I share that knowledge.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm everything that you're saying is something that I started to do myself. And so seeing where you're at, seeing what you've done, it's like, okay, so I'm not the first one to do any of this stuff. But it's awesome to see where it can go, because you are doing awesome things. We were talking offline before, and tell us, you didn't have to pay for that cruise, right?
I did not. It was actually one of my clients paid for me to go there, because the people that she wants to meet are there. But the cruise is 8 nights, which is 9 days with travel time. It comes to about 14 days all in. And she did not have 14 days to go on that. It was a great event, super fun event, but she still didn't have 14 days to go on it. So she said, I'll pay for you to go. You make the connections, the people are there. I managed to make connections to, I think it was about 12 people immediately, and it's going to be probably about 10 or 15 or 20 more once I start doing follows with people to see who the great connections are. So yeah, so I was able to go on that cruise paid for by a client, because the connections on it were worth it. But it was my time, her money, worked great together.
No, and that's fantastic. You kind of found that niche where, there's not a lot of people up there like you. To be fair, I hadn't seen much of it. I thought it was being original. I'm not. So
still pretty original. It's not like you copied me,
No, so it was really funny seeing that, and being able to say, here's something that I'm good at. Like you said, you're radically extroverted. The only thing slowing you down is your body, and you have other people that need that, right? There's a lot of people that they want to network, they want to meet more people, they just don't have the time or just the bandwidth to do it, because when they do have an event that they could go to, it's like, yeah, but I just spent 12 hours doing this, and it's like, I'm not going to be personable. So to have an expert, we're willing to have an expert in literally every other part of our lives. But you finding that niche, that's amazing. I don't know, blows my hair back about it. So what's your favorite thing about what you're doing?
My favorite thing is getting to be on the inside track of information. So when you know a lot of people, you get to hear things. And I always find it fun, because I tend to be fairly cutting edge. Some people are cutting edge because they're on all the right newsletters and they're reading all these things. Like, that's introvert work. And if you're an introvert, that's totally how you be on the cutting edge. You're on the newsletters and you're following the groups and you're in the right forums and whatnot. Yeah, that's not my thing. My thing is I hang out with the people who are in the know, and then they tell me what's going on. So it's always funny for me to talk to people who are like, yeah, I haven't tried ChatGPT yet. I'm like, what? That was like 2 years ago. Or the people like, yeah, I'm not on Zoom that often. What? That's crazy. That's like you don't have a car yet because you're not sure if they're reliable. But because I'm so far to the cutting edge, I sometimes forget what it's like behind the cutting edge because I'm surrounded by people who are in these new places, and especially with online business, because technology is changing, but also the market is changing around online business, around podcasts and launches and funnels and all this stuff, because COVID drove hundreds of thousands of people into the industry. And if one person's doing something, it might work. When 10,000 people do it behind them, because that one person taught everyone their strategies, suddenly that doesn't work anymore. But now this is going to work. And watching people use these old strategies and be like, how are you 6 years behind the times? It's because they're not connecting. They're in their little bubble. They're doing their thing that they think works, but they're not realizing what's happening because they're not out there talking to people. They're not curious. And that's one of the keys to networking is curiosity. Is one of the most important things is focusing on value. I want everyone I meet to come out better for meeting me. Just be like, oh, I'm so glad I met Michael because I learned this or introduced me to this person or this good thing happened. But the other key thing is curiosity, because I can't help you if I don't know anything about you. And if you're curious, then you listen. And if you listen, then you're a great conversationalist. There's a whole chapter about that in How to Win Friends and Influence People. There's a story about he met this world-renowned botanist who he couldn't hold a candle to his knowledge, so all he could say was, oh, really? Wow. Oh, that's interesting. Wow. Oh, really? Wow. At the end of it, the botanist went to the host and said, that was the best conversation I've had in years. Why? Because he couldn't say anything. He could just listen. So curiosity makes you a great conversationalist, but it also means that you can then say, that's all really good. Do you know my friend Joe? No, I don't know Joe. And Joe's a perfect introduction because you were curious and you were listening.
Yeah. I always tell people, right out of the book, be interested, not interesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not about waiting for your turn to talk. It's about engaging with them. And you're absolutely right. If you let people go, it's kind of funny too, because most people aren't used to that. So about the 10-minute mark, they've run out of their rehearsed bit to say, and they start going in uncharted territory, and they'll start saying things like, I've never told anybody this before, or you're such a great listener. And you're just like, I just haven't interrupted you. That's all I've done. And it's kind of awesome to see that. So, no, that's fantastic advice. And, I always tell people the same thing. There's a bell curve with people that you're going to meet. You have the people on this very far end, like the gentleman that you met earlier that just picked your brain and left, right? You're going to have people that just come in and pitch slap you, and you're going to remember them out of everybody because you're going to remember not to talk to them again. Then you're going to have all the people in the middle where they're, just kind of average. And you're going to have the people on the very far end, the Michaels out there where they came in and said, how can I help you out? They listened, they engaged. You're going to remember them, and you're going to remember them for the right reason. So that's awesome advice. I think everybody should jot that down and go pick up a copy of How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's an important read. I think it should be mandatory in high school. But, so starting off your career, doing all this, you've obviously had some hard-won lessons that you went along, and you've seen a lot of other people do the exact same things. What advice would you give somebody that's trying to get into the entrepreneur space or is newly into it that could use some advice, especially in the networking space?
So I'll speak specifically to the online business space. And this is any kind of practitioner, coach, whatever. A lot of the experts out there who are going to offer you all kinds of programs to teach you things are going to talk about building your multi-million-dollar business, building your billion-dollar empire and all this. And now if you actually want to build a multi-million-dollar business, that's great. You should be strategizing to build a multi-million-dollar business, find people who have done those kinds of things and work in that way. That means you're going to get funding. You're probably going to get investors or maybe debt. You're going to be building massive infrastructure. That is maybe 1 out of 50 people who's listening to this. For the other 49 of you, you don't want to build an empire. You want to build a lifestyle business. You want to build a business that supports your lifestyle, makes $1, $2, maybe $300,000 a year. Because here's the thing, you build a $200,000 a year business, you can probably put 160, 170, 180,000 that in your pocket. You build $1 million business, you're going to put 160, 170, 180,000 that in your pocket, because the rest of it's paying for your staff and your technology and your tools and all the stuff you need to pay for, your advertising and all the rest. The reason you do that is because you want to build a business that you might sell one day, or it's exitable or whatnot, which again, you have to start that from day one, building it that way. And if that's not what you want to do, that's fine. There's no shows out there. There's no podcasts or shows featuring the $150,000 businesses. They're not exciting. They're not dramatic. There's no drama when I'm talking to myself, right? When it's me or me and my wife, like you can't follow us around with cameras. It's all happening in my head. It's the businesses that have a team of 20 you can follow around with a camera. Those are exciting and dramatic, and they can have $1 billion exit. But for the rest of us in real life, most of us don't actually want to do that. And so don't fall into the trap of thinking you must aim for 7 figures. You must go to millions, and then realize everyone out there saying that to have a successful business, you must, is usually to get your 6-figure business to a mid 7-figure business, you must. That doesn't mean you. So they say you must have a book, you must have a funnel, a podcast, a lead magnet, an email list, a social media presence, whatever. You don't must. I'm going to say, you don't must need any of those. Now, if something excites you, like I wrote my book because I wanted to write my book. I had something to share, I wanted to write it, so I wrote the book. Second book, I had something else to share, I wanted to write it, so I wrote the book. I never thought I must have this book to build my business. I just wanted to do it. But if you're ever doing something because someone tells you a successful business must have this, stop. Because they don't know your business. And they're usually selling the thing that the successful business must have. So that would be like, watching a cereal commercial and saying, well, I have to eat Trix as part of this complete breakfast, and I want to eat a complete breakfast. Like, you wouldn't fall for that. But somehow we fall for a successful business must have a book.
Yep. No, absolutely. And you're not right. You get to define what success looks like for you. Do you want to be able to take, 14 days to go on a cruise? Do you want to be able to, just afford enough that you can retire your wife and you guys can do this stuff? Yeah, that's success. 7 figures, or somebody renting a Lamborghini to go stand in front of to record a short and tell you how they, bought the Lamborghini that they clearly rented. Maybe don't fall for that.
Yeah.
So that's awesome advice. Yeah, I really like that. So as far as people that you're able to help, is there like some pain points that they all have in common? Just, a lot of folks, you help a lot of people, but what are the pain points that people are dealing with that if they're going through XYZ, you're the person they should talk to?
So there's actually 2 groups that I help. The one group is my networking concierge clients, and I'm very selective. At the moment, I have 2 clients for that because they have to be someone that I believe in their product, that I'd feel comfortable endorsing them wholeheartedly, that their structure is set up so when I send them connections, they can actually monetize them. But that's for someone who is very well established, extremely ethical, mission-driven, profitable, and if they get more connections to good partners, those partners can promote their program and build their mission, their revenue. But the other people that I help is the people who I was speaking to in the answer to the last question, which is those people who don't want to build multi-million-dollar empires. They just want to build a good lifestyle business. And that's something that I've realized recently is a group I'm uniquely suited to serving, because I've learned so much through all of my connections that I can meet with someone, and when they say, well, I'm trying to do this type of business, I can say, oh yeah, I've met 3 other people who did that well. Here's 2 ways they did it poorly. Here's one way they did it well. Try using this strategy. You don't need to write a book. You might want a lead magnet. You can build an email list. It doesn't need to be that big. I've seen enough different ways, so I'm not one of those, I've got a 12-step proven process for everyone who has a business. It's more, I can work with those people who are not served by those who are teaching them to build great empires, but those who actually just want to, serve some people. They want to give, they want to serve and have an impact, but on dozens or hundreds, maybe thousands, maybe tens of thousands, but not hundreds of millions or billions.
Yeah, no, I get that. How about power partners? Who are people that, they're the people that you're referring back and forth with, you find, outside of just connecting them to other people, or, like-minded, able to help you back and forth? Are there certain industries or just type of person?
So I've found the people who are most valuable to me, it's hard to quantify exactly, because they are the people I resonate with. They're the people who believe in authenticity and believe that business is a form of service, that it's not that they see money as a byproduct of success, not a measurement of success, that they are trying to do good in the world, and by doing good, money will come to them, as opposed to those who measure their success in money, because when you measure your success in money, then money is all that matters. And when you chase money, you never have enough. And you will make sacrifices of what really matters to, there's that saying of what good is it to win the world and lose your soul. So not those people who lose their soul, but those people who are in it for the right reasons. They want to serve, they want to make the world better, make lives better. And those tend to be the people who stay in my orbit, and who we support each other and make connections for each other just naturally, because we both know the other one is doing great things in the world, and we want to be a part of what they're doing.
It's surprising how many of those people are out there too. I hear it, that exact same thing differently from basically everybody I'm talking to. Because it's the Zig Ziglar, helping up people get what they want, you'll get what you want. It's the golden rule. It's the reap what you sow. It's the karma. It's the go-giver. We've been defining it different ways forever, right? It's just part of nature. It's human law, whatever you want to call it. So people realize that, and you pick up on that when you're meeting somebody that's genuinely being authentic. And there's a lot of them, and that's always awesome to see. And I've been noticing that more and more. So that's awesome.
And unfortunately, what ends up happening is the people who really have a desire to serve and to give, they don't have as much desire to be famous, to have a yacht, to be high profile. So the ones who are higher profile, the ones who get 3 million downloads in their podcast, the ones who get on TV, the ones who get, elected to high office, they are driven by that ambition, and often an unbalanced ambition. And so we get the impression that most people out there are in it for themselves and are selfish and greedy and corrupt, when really far more people understand the golden rule, and far more people understand the benefit of doing good, but they're not committed to maximum exposure. So we don't see them all the time. So we see in many industries, coaching industry suffers from this greatly. The biggest names in the coaching industry are driven by their own ego, not their desire to serve. There's a few who are driven by a desire to serve, but unfortunately too many are driven by ego, and that's why they're so big, because the ones who just want to serve don't get that big because they're too busy serving to scale. It's like, if I had more than 100 clients, I couldn't serve them well. I'm going to cap out at 100. Whereas others are like, they're still paying, right? All right, keep them coming.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be said for that. There's some certain traits that don't tend to show up in the same place at the same time. What would you say are the keys to building a powerful network from scratch?
The first key is to know your goal. So what are you trying to do? And if you don't have that, then you will build a generalized network, which is great. If you don't know what your goal is, build a network anyway, because it'll be good to have it when you do figure out what you want to do. But it's better to know what you want to do, because then you'll build that network with intention. The next key is to be curious. And so as you meet people, be interested, not just try to be interesting, because it's way easier to be interested than interesting. And then seek to provide value to everyone you meet. And there's 3 ways you can provide value. The first is introductions. If you know anyone, you can make introductions. They don't have to be amazing introductions. They don't have to be life-changing introductions. They just have to be introductions. And if you're networking in spaces, you tend to be meeting the peers of the people you're networking with. So when I first came to networking events down here in Groton, I knew other business owners that the people I was meeting wanted to meet, because they were in the same room. Sometimes literally in the same room. Hey, have you met this guy over here? Let me walk you over. I met him 10 minutes ago. You'll like him. You can also give advice. Advice could be, check out this podcast. Have you read The Go-Giver? Have you read How to Win Friends and Influence People? It could be a YouTube channel. It could be actual advice, suggestions. And then the third one, and this is the distant third, this is the one that stays behind while the other two talk, is offers. It is possible that the thing that people give you money for could provide value, but you only mention it after they have indicated a need which you can solve. And some people say, you shouldn't do any selling in the networking environment, but that's not true, because if you have a solution for them, you should share it, right? If my back's hurting, and I mentioned my back's hurting, and you're a physical therapist, and you're really good at helping people with lower back pain, but you think, well, we're networking, I shouldn't be selling that to you. Well, it makes you kind of a jerk, because you could make my back pain go away, and you didn't tell me. But there has to be a need first. So if we're talking, and you're like, yeah, I'm a physical therapist, how's your back? Back's fine, back off. Right? Once they've identified the need, then you may say, hey, I have a solution that might help you if you're interested. If you'd like to have a conversation, we can do that. But you want to provide that value. And I learned to do that because my memory is terrible. So all things people tell you need to do a network, you need to remember names. You need to send thank you cards. You need to remember details. You need to follow up. I'm terrible at all of that. But what I do is I front load value. So the first time I meet someone, I make an introduction, or I share a piece of advice, or I somehow provide that value. So when I meet them for the first time, the second time, because I don't remember them, their thought isn't, what a jerk, he forgot my name. Their thought is, well, last time I met him for the first time, he made a good introduction. So maybe if I meet him for the first time again, he'll make a second really good introduction. Let's just play along. So, people aren't offended if you don't remember those details, if you serve them. And what I've realized is this stuff like remembering their name and their kids and whatever, it's a placeholder for the value that you'll create, right? I want to build a relationship with you because at some point that relationship is going to yield dividends. Now, we also, we form relationships because we like each other and friends or whatever. But in the business context, most people won't actually admit this, but subconsciously, we're building a deep enough relationship so it's deep enough so you're going to provide me value. And I'm providing you value, so you'll provide me value. It's not necessarily putting money in a bank and taking it out, but it's, feeding into that. And so if we meet once and I try to put a bunch into the relationship and we meet again and you don't remember me, I'm like, what the heck? I put in all this energy in this relationship. I'm not going to I got to start over. Are you kidding me? But if you provide value up front, they're like, I remember when I met you for the first time last time. That was great. I'm happy to meet you for the first time again, because the first time was great. So I don't feel like I'm having to rebuild. And that then makes it less stressful and makes people be like, let me go back to that well. And then, of course, they probably remember what you've done for them. And if they don't, they don't. The universe remembers. That's the key thing. You put good out into the universe, good comes back. The person you did it for doesn't have to remember. The universe remembers.
Absolutely. And even if that person doesn't, like you said, the universe will, and most people will, even if that one doesn't. So awesome. How can networking help small businesses connect with those big opportunities that, they might not even have dreamed of?
So anything you want to do requires people. Even the biggest companies are made up of people. Right? You don't talk to Microsoft. You talk to Joe Schmo at Microsoft, who is the procurement manager for the whatever. So networking, if you're clear on your goal of who you're trying to meet and you've built relationships with people and they want to support you, you can then share that goal, especially if you make that goal a compelling vision and people want to help you. So my goal may be, I want to sell widgets to Microsoft. You don't care. That's my thing, not yours. But my compelling vision could be my widgets will reduce energy consumption by 30%, which will save the earth. That could be compelling. My compelling vision could be, if I can grow my business enough, then I can pay for my kids to go to college. That could be compelling to you. But you have to make it somehow compelling and exciting. It could also be compelling because I've helped you, you want to help me. Right? That's the least compelling, but that could also be compelling as well. But figure out ways to make what you're doing compelling beyond just, I want to sell more stuff. And then once you share that compelling vision, then people in your network will say, yeah, sure, I'd like to help you. Well, I don't know Joe Schmo at Microsoft, but I do know Bob Smith, who golfs near Microsoft's headquarters. So maybe he's got connections there. Let me introduce you to him. And he can then share that compelling vision and be like, hey, check this out. This guy's trying to meet Joe Schmo at Microsoft. Do you think you might be able to help him out? Yeah, sure. Seems like a nice guy. For what you're telling me, I'll be happy to take that call and go for it. The alternative is you're cold calling them, you're sending letters, you're, trying all those foot in the door tricks, which can work eventually. but there's no foot in the door like a warm introduction. And warm introductions can be freaking magical because people are very guarded with their time, but at the same time, a few minutes of their time is one of the easiest forms of currency to exchange. So, my schedule's very busy. I'm guarded with my time. But if someone I know and trust were to say, hey, could you spend 10 minutes taking a look at what this guy's got? He seems pretty cool. And I said I'd connect him with you. What you willing to do that? I'm like, for you, I got 10 minutes. Let's see what he's got. See if he's any good. And so, that is so much more powerful than anything else you might be doing to get in the door. And it's all about those relationships where you've built that groundwork ahead of time and created that value ahead of time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's it's the easiest to, because you provided everybody you've networked with, you provided them with that value. So if you do ask, hey, you know what, I met somebody, they're really cool. You have 10 minutes. They know, yeah, no, he's provided me. Absolutely, I got time for you. So having that trust, that relationship with everybody, just it kind of compounds itself. So that's awesome. What tips do you have for hosting engaging networking events?
So when you put good people in proximity, good things will happen if you get out of the way. So that's the first thing I say is don't do things that get in the way of networking. So if we're talking about virtual events, then put people in breakout rooms. That's where networking happens. There's different ways to do that. But if you just take people and dump them into breakout rooms, they'll talk to each other. Now, ideally, it's good to give them something to work with. I like to teach a simple 2-line introduction, which is, how what I do is. So, for example, how most people are uncomfortable networking. What I do is teach them networking in a fun and easy way. But, it's the first step is get out of the way. So something I see done wrong is that they try to give a prompt for the breakout rooms, but it's an incongruous prompt. So go into the breakout room and discuss your last vacation. I don't care about your last vacation. I don't know who you are. Right? So in regular life, I want to know who you are before I care if we're going to discuss further. In business networking, it's backwards. I want to know if it's worth getting to know you before I get to know you. Like, if we become best friends and you're amazing and I love working with you, but we have nothing to talk about, then awesome, I've got a new friend. I got enough friends, not trying to make friends, trying to make connections. So, a great leadoff question I heard, which was pretty creative, was, let's see if I remember it. I think it was, who in your family most influenced who you've become today? That was a great question because you have to mention who you are today, like what you're doing, but it also gives you the opportunity to talk about your grandfather, your father, your uncle, something in your background. And then it gives you the flexibility to focus more on who you are now or more on your background. It gives you that flexibility. And ironically, that was a question I was told to be used at a networking event. And then the host of the event ended up switching it out to something far less interesting. But that was a great question. But create a space where people can actually connect. So you put an expert speaker in the room, that's not networking. Listening to a speaker isn't networking. Giving them a prompt that distracts from the actual conversation they should be having is not good networking. But put them in breakouts, give them something clear to talk about, get out of their way, let them have conversations. That's going to create the best networking environment. Often less is more.
I really like that. Let them talk about what they want to talk about because they're there for a reason, but give them flavor to add. A little bit of, this is you, this is what you're doing. Oh, I'm a financial advisor, and then flavor, right? That makes it personal. I like that. That's awesome. I hadn't considered that before because I've had those prompts and have promptly ignored them. I just went in and I'm like, tell me about you. So that tends to be what happens in my experience, or it could just be me. I guess I'm in those breakout rooms, so it might just be me. But awesome. Well,
this is when no one does that. When nobody ignores the prompt, they actually follow the prompt.
Yeah. No. You try to ignore the prompt, and then they bring it up afterwards. You're like, didn't want to talk about it, but my favorite color is green. Clearly, right? Next.
Yes.
So, awesome. Was there anything that I missed or failed to ask that you really wanted to
add? No, I think we touched on it pretty well. So we went through the kind of the three things that make the 3 things that make networking most effective and knowing your goals. And I'm glad we're able to talk about networking events, because that's definitely one of my pet peeves, is going to a networking event and not being able to network because the structure gets in the way. So that was great stuff. But yeah, the one thing I will share is I do have a book out there on the market called The Guy Who Knows a Guy. And that is the story of how I went from having no network at all to being the guy who knows a guy. So if anyone wants the full depth of that story, to go from I'm moving to a new town, how do I do it? Well, I wrote my story and you can follow it.
Awesome. Well, if somebody wants to get to know the guy who knows the guy or find that book, where can they find you or how can they connect with you?
So they can go to guywhoknowsaguy.com. There's no the at the beginning. I couldn't get the. So www.guywhoknowsaguy.com, and you will find my website that you can totally tell I made myself. But on there are links to all of my social channels, and a link to get the book, and a link to my virtual summits and events, and all the rest of it goes through that one central and slightly messy hub.
Perfect. And I'll put all that in the show notes so we don't have to look for it. So we'll make it super easy for everybody, but perfect. I recommend everybody reach out to Michael, have that conversation. He's one of the people you're going to remember talking to, right? He leads off with service. He's there to help you out. He's genuinely going to listen. If you've never had a conversation with somebody that's actually listened, try it, right? It'll shock you. You'll be like, wow, I'm used to my 3 minutes, and then it's your turn, and then I wait until my turn to get have that conversation. You're going to learn more in that conversation than you would otherwise. So absolutely do that. For folks that want to reach out to me, you can find me at ikag.me. You can find more episodes, subscribe to our newsletter, and connect with more awesome people like Michael and join our growing community. If you or somebody you know would like to be interviewed, you can also apply on the website. But Michael, I really appreciate you coming on. Was really looking forward to this. I've loved our conversation so far. And I think you added a lot of value. So I'm going to have to go back. I'm going to take some notes myself. I recommend everybody else do the same. But let's all go out, have an awesome day, and grow our circles. All right.
Great. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.